All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to our December YouTube Live. So if this is your first time joining, thank you very much for joining. And if you guys are a returning member to our YouTube Live, thanks for coming back. I'm joined by Rideshare Guy contributor Christian Perea. Christian, you want to say hello?
Hey, everybody. I'm Christian with the Rideshare Guy.
Awesome. So it looks like he's in a festive mood over there to celebrate Christmas. I guess that's not a tree in the background, but I do see some lights, and looks like we've got a bunch of people joining right now. So let's see. It looks like it is working on my end, and I want to make sure that the notification came in loud and clear. So hopefully you guys are hearing me. Spencer says 1 star for arriving late. I think we were a few minutes late, so my mistake, but hopefully we can make up for it, Spencer, and you guys can get some good value out of this session. So as always, we're going to go over a couple top news stories, some of the latest app updates, and there definitely been a couple big news stories recently and some latest latest app updates. A bunch of changes to Uber's mileage and time and distance and things like that, which I'm sure you guys will have we've been getting a lot of comments from drivers on this, so that'll be interesting to talk about. And then we'll spend a majority of the session doing question and answers. So I've got Christian over here, and we'll be answering any questions that you guys may have. So start thinking about those questions, write them down, and in about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll get into the Q&A portion of that, so that you guys can get all the information you need. And of course, make sure you stay tuned to the end too. We're gonna be doing a little Christmas giveaway of the Rideshare Guide. Let's see if I've got one handy right here. So we'll be giving away my book, which hopefully makes for a good Christmas present. Christian, what do you think is at the top of the list for Rideshare drivers?
As soon as you asked me, my thing died.
Okay. Well, so you don't know what
drivers?
What's that?
What was the question? Top of the list for rideshare drivers?
Rideshare drivers for Christmas.
Pay raise.
Pay raise. All right, well, that's a good gift. I don't know who's going to give that to you, but that is an option. So stay tuned to the end, and we'll do a little giveaway. Looks like last month, Todd, Lonnie, and Mary won the last YouTube Live giveaway, where we actually gave away a copy of our course. So that's kind of a cool little giveaway we did last month. And yeah, if you guys are having any issues if you guys are watching live right now, Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific, you should see my face, you should hear the audio, and there's also a live chat going on that you can pull up if you're on the phone. I believe it's down at the bottom. If you're on your desktop, it should be over to the side. And if you guys are watching this after the fact, you can view the live chat, but you won't be able to participate, obviously, but you can leave a comment, and I'll pop in there afterwards and answer any questions if you don't happen to be watching live. Looks like we've got some bunch of members joining right now. We've got Steven from Hawaii, John Carlos from New York City. Let's see, who else we got? Richie, Spencer, awesome. So definitely see some new names, but also some names that have been here before. So let's go ahead and get started. And like I said, we'll cover a couple top news stories, latest app updates, and then get into the Q&A portion. So hopefully you guys get those questions ready. And, I think one of the biggest stories that we saw in the past early, week, but also the past month, was that New York City set the nation's first minimum pay rate for Uber and Lyft drivers. So I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about this, because in the past, I've gotten some mixed feedback from drivers. Some drivers, of course, drivers like Christian, they just said, I want to get paid more. But other drivers have told me that they don't want the government to intervene and tell, cities shouldn't be telling Uber and Lyft that they should pay more. So overall, I think this is actually definitely a good thing. I really like the way that New York City approached this minimum pay rate, because what they did is they set a utilization-based rate. So you can't they're not saying that if there's 50,000 drivers, you're just going to go out. Uber and Lyft have to pay them $17.22 minimum wage after expenses, which is the amount they set. They said it's only going to be that if utilization is reached, at a certain utilization level. So basically, they're kind of aligning all the incentives and saying, if drivers are going to be out there and they're going to be busy, then you got to pay them. But if Uber and Lyft are just flooding the market, it's going to cost you as a company. So Christian, you have any quick thoughts on that?
What I really think is interesting about New York City's pay raise, like you just said, is based off that utilization rate. So, I think a lot of folks who maybe aren't super familiar with Uber like us would look at, say, these sort of regulations on minimum wage, and they could say, well, this is, it might make the market really inefficient for, getting rides for passengers. And then they'll maybe look back at the old school sort of like taxi system, right? But I think this is like a really like innovative way to kind of peg a sort of like market balance to an hourly sort of pay rate goal. I'm not entirely sure, just from what I've seen so far on this, that like, they're going to fill the gap if you don't make that much per hour. But I would be interested to hear about how they're going to kind of like do that, right? Like, what if you're a driver in New York and you don't make the 17.22 per hour?
Well, I think Uber is going to have to cover that difference. Yeah, there are. Okay, I think your audio cut out, Christian, so we can't hear you, but it looks like you're trying to talk. But, I think there are a lot of logistics that they definitely need to work out. But I think for the most part, I do like the basic setup, and it'll be really interesting because I think other cities, typically, New York is big, big, important city. And so other cities are going to kind of look to what's happening in New York and potentially copy that model. So I want to chime in with a couple comments from our readers. Well, first of all, Alliance says, thanks, Christian, for keeping it real with pay raise for drivers. Backseat Driver says the government has to get involved. There's too much BS going on, which, I tend to agree with. And I think that sort of shows in just the number, when taxis were around, there weren't enough drivers. And now that Uber and Lyft are kind of flooding the market with so many cars, too much of a good thing is turning out to be bad. And there's a lot of congestion and drivers aren't making enough. And there's competition between drivers. So it does seem like a little regulation here makes sense. Pretty Cool Guy says government will make it worse. So I'd be curious to know why you think government will make it worse. Alliance says independent contractors should set their own prices like the Sidecar app did. Well, I guess that sounds interesting, but also Sidecar went out of business. So I don't know, I don't know how much that model makes sense. There is a new company called InDrive, I think is what they're called. They just launched in New York City, and that's actually what they allow drivers to do. They allow drivers to set their own rates, and it's very reminiscent of Sidecar, if you ask me. So that could be an option there for you. Let's see. Christian, do we get you back?
How am I?
All right, we can hear your audio again. So you're back. And so that was a big story. And then, the other kind of quick story I want to talk about is just the fact that Lyft is, announced their IPO. And I think pretty quickly after that, Uber also announced their IPO. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. I don't know if it's going to have a huge impact on drivers going forward. I mean, it seems like Lyft and Uber, they're going to try and move towards profitability. But I mean, Uber lost $4.5 billion last year. So that's definitely not going to be any kind of quick turnaround. So I'm curious to know if you guys do have any questions around the IPO. I know, Christian, you recently did an article on, what it could look like if Uber were to pass out shares, right? Part of this IPO, or stock shares, employee stock shares to drivers, right?
That's correct. And most of the article kind of came down to Uber's almost certainly not going to pass out, shares to drivers. But yeah, it would definitely be really interesting if they did. Personally, as somebody who's driven for them, I think I should get some shares retroactively to Uber on the IPO. That would be nice.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and leave a link to your article in the show notes, so drivers can check that out and take a look. And it looks like we do, and I guess the other big news that literally just happened yesterday was this Uber blackout, right? The app went down, and I guess there's also been some issues with Instant Pay too. And I haven't got a lot of information from Uber. Los Angeles Unstoppable says, yeah, what do we know? What's up with the blackout? And Dave, the Uber slave, says, why no stories? That's kind of a funny name, Dave. Why no stories in the news about the Uber blackout? So yeah, I mean, I did see a story in the news. I can't remember what the outlet was, but someone did write about the fact that the Uber app was down. And I mean, I guess this kind of goes back to, there's certain things that drivers don't have a lot of control over. It is a little ironic that, Uber announced this new driver app that was supposed to solve a lot of these issues. Hey, I even did a big video about how awesome the new Uber driver app was, and it's going down. So I don't know that that's a very good look for Uber. They release this brand new driver app, and then the app goes down, and we'll see, kind of if they make payments back to drivers or anything like that. But course, that's one of the main reasons why you always want to have Lyft as a backup, for example. I know, Christian, you sent me a screenshot of the traffic to our website yesterday, and there are a whole bunch of people, that are having this issue with the Uber app and wondering what was going on, right?
Yeah, so one thing that was really interesting about this blackout was that, I think since you and I have been doing this, Harry, there's been about like 2 Uber blackouts per year, just kind of on average, maybe. But this was the first time I heard about an app blackout on like my FM radio while driving down the street. So I was driving down the street and they went on to my FM radio station and said, "Hey guys, the Uber app is out." So I thought that was really interesting because in the past, drivers have actually criticized Uber for not doing enough to kind of give them a heads up when the app goes out. And I think this time around, like just a little speculation, that could have been like maybe a better way that Uber's been trying to notify drivers. But this seemed to like get a lot more like pull than previous Uber blackouts. But yeah, your traffic went up a lot when the Uber blackout happened, which is
And I mean, I think most, if most of you guys are watching us right now, you probably already know that you should be driving for at least both Uber and Lyft, if not other services, so that when these issues do pop up, I'd be very disappointed if any of my viewers weren't signed up for at least 2 apps, because they're probably not doing a good job listening if they're not. But when these situations do happen, right, it's kind of out of your control. But I know Lyft was probably prime time and pretty good, right? Because everyone that normally uses the Uber app can't get a ride, they switch over to Lyft. So not only are you kind of rewarded by having that backup option, but you're also going to be rewarded with a little extra PT since it's the only option. Dave says they didn't say anything on Twitter. They're trying to cover it up. I mean, yeah, I guess I wouldn't call it a cover up, but I'm sure that, they don't want a bunch of people talking about how their brand new app broke, right? I mean, so I think that kind of makes sense. Savage Scientist says Lyft is even worse. Pretty Cool Guy says the new app was a big disappointment. So yeah, feel free if you guys want to expand at all on these comments. We have a lot of one-line comments right now, but if you guys want to expand at all, let me know why you think things. I'm happy to share your thoughts. And let's see, I think as far as the only other app updates that I kind of want to talk about, I know Lyft, we've done a couple videos about UberPro. And if you guys aren't familiar with this program, basically it's a pilot in 8 cities that rewards drivers at certain levels, platinum, gold, or, I don't know, gold, platinum, whatever. I don't know the levels, but maybe platinum's the highest. And basically, as you get higher in the levels, you get more rewards. You get extra 6% on mile and time if you make it to the top level. You get to see where riders are headed. And Lyft kind of quietly, announced this. I think Uber did a lot more PR around their UberPro program and everything. But Lyft has actually made about 15 different small to medium-sized feature improvements. And we wrote an article about this recently and also published a video that I'm going to go ahead and link to right now if you guys want to check it out. But one of the ones that I kind of stood out to me is that Lyft is now also rolling out to everyone the sort of see where your riders are headed before you accept feature. I don't know if that's the official name, but that's what I'm calling it. And basically, if you keep a 90% acceptance rate or higher, they're going to allow you to see the driver to see the time and the direction of an upcoming trip at the time of the ping, right? So when you get the request, which is definitely pretty cool. So giving you a little more control over your workflow, but you do have to maintain that 90% acceptance rate. What do you think about that, Christian?
I was just going to ask what you thought about that 90% rate. I think it's too high. I mean,
yeah, I think it's going to be tough for a lot of Lyft drivers outside of busy areas. I think one of the big complaints about Lyft is that they often send you requests from 10, 15, 20 minutes away and probably shouldn't be accepting those. And so it's going to be hard to maintain 90 acceptance rate in smaller to medium-sized cities. But if you are in a city where you can maintain that 90% acceptance rate, I think it is pretty valuable. I mean, I kind of get it from Lyft's point of view. They don't want if every driver had access to that, they'd probably ignore all the short rides or ignore rides to certain parts of town. So I do think that it makes sense to reward, kind of the top drivers, but maybe 90% is a little strict. Maybe it would be better if it was 70 or 80%, but, at the same time, it's probably not going to be a great feature for everyone, but for those that can take advantage of it, I know that you'll be, if you're one of the top drivers, you'll really be able to take advantage of it for sure.
If I could jump in there too, just as a suggestion, if you are, keeping that 95% sort of acceptance rate throughout the week, it definitely will be extremely useful for like sort of these like larger events or when there's a lot of prime time out, I think, because if you're going to choose to maybe miss a couple of requests when there's a lot of like demand, then I think it'll definitely come in handy there.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like, okay, so Rich said in regards to the Uber driver app going down, he said, I messaged them on Twitter. At first, they always act like they don't know anything, or maybe they really don't know, and they'll acknowledge it after it's fixed. So it definitely seems like Uber needs to do a better job just notifying drivers of kind of what's going on. I know that when I used to work at a day job, right, whenever there was like a big earthquake or an incident, right, they had like an emergency response line that you could call in. And of course, if Uber is trying to get drivers to only contact them through the app, and then the app goes down, you can't really contact them, right? So I definitely think when these kind of big issues arise, Uber needs to do a better job about contacting drivers. I mean, I guess, there's not a whole lot you can do, but it would be nice to know if it's just you, is your app broken or is it everyone's app broken, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I haven't gotten requests and I look at it and I ask myself, is the app broken? And then I won't find out until I go on Facebook groups and see all the other drivers posting. So,
Yeah, definitely. All right. So I think we'll go ahead and get into the Q&As now. I've seen a lot of good questions come in, so happy to start answering them. Let's see. So Los Angeles Unstoppable says, when is Platinum Plus hitting the LA market? So I think you're talking about UberPro. And so I believe UberPro is in 8 markets right now. And I'll leave a link in the live chat right now if you guys want to go ahead and take a look in. As typically with these pilots, I mean, they kind of launch them in a few cities, test them to see that they're working. And then if they like them, I would say they roll them out anywhere from, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, or maybe more, 6 to 9 months later. It's not super quick. I don't know. How quick do you think Uber rolls these pilots out after they test them and like them, Christian?
Oh, this is really interesting to me because Uber and Lyft over the last couple of years have really taken this approach for the slow rollouts, whereas when in the past they would actually launch a new feature nationwide, like all in one night, and it'd get really sloppy. But I just based off of my experience, they should have a new feature like this rolled out to everybody within the next 9 months. Usually in 9 months, it'll be in all of the markets. There might be a few where they choose exclusively not to have a certain feature. But, when we look at new surge or the rate card rebalance, which were also 2 pretty big stories last week for people in California, then, we see that Uber really likes, and Lyft, they start testing in a couple markets. They take about 9 months to kind of just roll a big change out to everybody. So maybe by the time it gets to us, UberPro could be a lot better or watered down.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the companies have gotten better in how they, roll. Well, I don't know if you would call it better, but I would say that they're definitely piloting things a lot more as opposed to like rolling it out to everyone. And, even with like, okay, so that's one story I guess I kind of wanted to bring up but forgot about. But the kind of, I guess we'll call this like, I don't know, a lot of people are calling it lowering rates, but whether you call it lowering rates or rebalancing rates, whatever you want to call it, rate change, where basically in a bunch of cities, Uber is lowering the per mile rate and increasing the per minute rate, which of course, as you might imagine, so now on shorter trips in traffic, you're going to get paid more, but on those longer trips, you're actually going to make less, right? Because you're getting paid less per mile. So we've covered this. This actually first happened back in July 16th, 2018. So that was a while ago when Uber first piloted these new kind of rebalanced rates, and then they rolled them out to another set of cities 3 months ago. And then last week, they rolled it out to a bunch of cities, San Francisco, Boston. It looks like I saw a question come in here. Who asked? Someone said, I think someone said that they saw it in Boston. But yeah, basically these, Susan says, okay, I don't know where it is, but I saw someone asked about the new rate. So, I mean, I know, Christian, you've talked to a lot of drivers about this, and we've kind of covered this pretty extensively. I can go also read off a few comments from the article, but, I think we have a pretty good article on this that I just linked to. Los Angeles says, yeah, that rate cut hurt. So, I mean, I think a lot of drivers are looking at this like a rate cut. We sort of analyzed it I know we did a nice chart basically from a driver in Minneapolis, and we kind of looked at his before and after. And basically what we found is that he would have made $1.36 less with the old rates. So it's sort of, I don't know. I mean, I guess we've looked at it a couple times and it is about the same, but is it interesting how a lot of drivers are definitely seeing this as a rate cut? And I think the big reason for that is because, hey, Uber is making this change, and it's definitely, they're not saying that it's going to get better. They're saying that it's going to stay the same. So I guess as a driver, you're kind of asking yourself, why are you changing things at all, right? This can only be worse.
Yeah, especially if you're a driver who, you have prior experience with Uber, changing rates. I think any rate change that Uber does, which isn't a direct increase of rates, is always going to garner a lot of driver suspicion at a bare minimum.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think that that's definitely what I've seen. We'll kind of keep an eye on this going forward. I mean, I know I have a lot of drivers, I can read off a couple of the comments on the article. Michael says, my earnings were cut in half after the new changes. I made $900. I worked 37 hours, but this week after working 37 hours, I made $470. And so I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't really believe that. I'm happy if he wants to share the info with me, we can kind of go over it. But I think more than anything, what I would like to see is actually Uber kind of either allow, when they do make changes like this, kind of put their money where their mouth is. And I think I mentioned this in a recent video I did, right? If Uber's going to make changes and tell us it's going to be the same, they should really say, okay, we're going to go back, over the next month. If your fares aren't the same on old versus new, we'll pay you, I don't know, $500 bonus or $100 bonus. That's sort of what I think I would like to see. How do you think, what do you think is the best solution?
I mean, regarding the rate rebalancing, I'm not entirely sure. I think I'm a little bit, I would like to see them do something like that with, say, new surge.
Yeah.
Because that's a much larger change in pay and just like the system and whatnot. I don't know. I think
new surge is a whole different story for sure. I think on new surge, drivers are definitely making less and it's more hassle. And, I don't think it's anywhere near kind of what Uber is describing. But I think with the rate rebalancing, I mean, Alliance here says, come on, Harry, everyone is complaining about making 1/3 less. And I definitely agree that there are a lot of people complaining, but I'm also saying that, when I've kind of looked in at the numbers, that it really isn't showing 1/3 less. But again, I'm happy if anyone wants to reach out to me and shoot me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com. I'll sit down and analyze your last couple hundred trips and we can go over it. But I don't know what the best way to sort of show this. We'll have to work on this. But Michael says Uber is getting way too greedy. Let's see. Uber and Lyft corporate trying to make more money from drivers before IPO release. I mean, I think that's definitely one of the issues we are going to see. As Uber and Lyft move towards IPO, I mean, it isn't surprising that they're going to try and make more money so that their numbers look better. To investors and things like that. Rideshare driver Dustin has joined, another fellow YouTuber with a great channel. He says, what's going on, Harry? Last night was crazy, going live with the Uber app crashing. Yeah, so a lot of people, kind of obviously upset about the Uber app going down. Sammy says, Uber surge change is definitely a cut. Using dollars instead of percentage creates a cap. And I think, as I mentioned, I definitely agree there on the new surge. And, it seems like Uber is, or not it seems like, but Uber is kind of really shifting more towards this, what they're calling more reliable earnings. And what's part of that is the new surge, the rate rebalance. And then if you guys have noticed, if you're in a Quest city, they're now allowing drivers to pick your Quest. And kind of really what they're trying to do is keep drivers earning the same amount of money, but with less volatility. And like I said, I'm just the messenger. This is kind of what their goal is, to tell you guys that like Uber corporate level, that's what they're working on. I don't think new surge has played out too well, but we'll see, what happens going forward. So let's see, what other questions do we have going on? Milton from Florida. Hey, how's it going? Savage Scientist says, I have a video that talks about Lyft taking almost 50% of the cost of the trip. Yeah, and I mean, I think with upfront pricing, there are definitely trips. Christian, I know you've highlighted a couple where Uber and Lyft take up to 70% of the fare on certain trips. So this is kind of one of the number one complaints that we hear from drivers right now. But I guess that's sort of where it's tricky, because they say that in the end it balances out. And when we've looked at it, the kind of effective commission is closer to 30 to 40%. But there are definitely trips where they take a lot of money, and it's pretty frustrating. So I totally get that.
From what we've looked at, I think, Harry, because I think between Harry and I, we've probably looked at close to 500 like upfront pricing give and take scenarios, and it's I'd say maybe 1 in 50 to 3 in 50 kind of get into that 60 or 70% kind of range of take rate, and they're usually like on the old sort of surge or primetime system, and they're usually a long distance trip. I've noticed. Whereas when you remove those three, then things get a little bit more like even.
Right. And I mean, if you guys actually look at if you guys take UberPool and you look at the breakdown, the earnings breakdown on UberPool, a lot of times Uber's actually losing money on UberPool, especially when there's not a match. And so you can see, hey, if it's -20, -30%, and 70% here and there, it does eventually balance out. I think it still balances out to a pretty high number, 30 to 40%, which is pretty high. But when I get people that say, hey, Uber is taking 70% of my commission, I mean, yeah, on fares here and there, they do. And I actually think that system is just kind of stupid in general, but that's just so you guys do understand that. So let's see. Spencer says, what's with the name change with your channel from the Rideshare guy to Harry Campbell back to the Rideshare guy? So I actually hired this guy to help me with some SEO, and he's been doing a great job. I don't think he's watching right now, but Milad, if you are, thanks for all your hard work. And I think he went kind of buck wild on my YouTube channel and just started changing a bunch of images and things like that. And then I saw a few things and I asked him just to change it back. So nothing really there, but I like hiring people content for us and help who I can give a little bit of direction, and then they go do their thing, right? And so I think he just went a little wild there and kind of changed things. Rideshare driver dust. So hopefully that answers your question, but nothing there. I think now the channel is called the Rideshare guy, but yeah, it's still me. Rideshare driver Dustin says drivers wouldn't have complained about the upfront pricing if they let us get the 80% we originally signed up with. And yeah, I think so. For someone like me, I've been driving for Uber and Lyft for 4 years. Christian too is probably on an 80%, 80% take, where Uber takes 20% commission. Then a couple of years later, always a service fee, right? So Uber's commission, they're kind of what we call their effective commission, right? If you add up all your rides and kind of average out their commission, it was always in that 30 to 40% range. It's always different for different drivers in different cities. So I don't know, it's kind of ironic, I think, that they call it upfront pricing, but it really is anything but upfront. So it is what it is. Bruce says they still take too much money on long rides when they are playing matchmaker. It is an effective rate increase without paying driver. What more can be said? And I think, Christian, I want to get your take on this, because I actually agree with Bruce here. Like I said, right, it does, whatever, the numbers can average out to whatever they average out. But if you go and do a 30 or 40 mile trip and you see that Uber takes a 50% cut or 60% cut, it seems like there has to be a limit, right, to what Uber can take. If you're on New Surge and you do a really long trip and you get like a $4 fee, whereas in the past you would have got double the fare, it definitely seems like Uber needs to do something a little different here, right? They could have these systems in place, but there still needs to be that potential for like a really nice long ride or a high fare, right?
Yeah. Oh man, the worst example I've ever seen of this is when there's a Uber pool that matches going from San Francisco to SFO on surge pricing. So my buddy, who's given about 25,000 rides, he's got a couple of rides he showed me where he'll do a Uber pool that matches to SFO under around 2x surge. And, you look at what both passengers paid, it's something to the tune of $150. Well, it's not on 2x surge, but and then my friend will get paid something more closer to about $30. So yeah.
Yeah, so let's see. I want to start knocking out some of these questions. So if you guys do have questions, now is the time to ask. We're about halfway through the YouTube Live. And as I mentioned, if you guys can stay tuned to the end, you'll go ahead and get a copy of the Rideshare guide. I also want to mention, I think I forgot to say this up front, but this month's YouTube Live is sponsored by Stride Health. And this is a company that we've been working with for a while. And I'm really happy that they're sponsoring our YouTube channel and our video, because December 15th is actually the open enrollment deadline. And so if you guys are in need of insurance or just want to get some more information, this is really the company to talk to. Stride Health, they can help you kind of find and compare health insurance plans before open enrollment ends. They make the process super easy. And if you really want to, you can actually get signed up for health insurance in about 10 minutes, which is pretty quick. And so, if you think signing up for health insurance feels like getting your teeth pulled, right, can be a hassle with some companies or at the DMV, we definitely recommend going to the rideshareguy.com/big stride. I'll leave a link right now in the show notes, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. If you're interested at all in health insurance, or if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I also want to see that we have a good question coming in now from who asked that, but it was about where can I get a vehicle for Uber and Lyft. So we've actually got a marketplace on our site that has all the different options for vehicles. So if you need, if you want to kind of compare Uber's fare option versus Lyft Express Drive versus Hire Car versus GM's Maven, there's a bunch of different options. So I definitely recommend that you guys go ahead and check that out. Savage Scientist said that is the same company in the Uber app. Yes, Stride Health is the same company there.
Yeah.
So I know Christian, you used Stride Health and kind of found them very
helpful. Yeah. I've used them the last couple of years. They helped me find my health insurance when I was just becoming an independent contractor. They've had a huge, I can go on. I won't. But
okay. And Brute
15.
Yeah, December 15th, key date. So Bruce says, even with all the upfront garbage, I have year-long stats. Uber has never made more than 17% in any given week, and usually only makes about 10%, and that includes their booking fee as well. That'd be interesting, Bruce. If you have all the stats, I'd love to see them. It seems a little low to me. I think that I would expect that it might be a little bit higher, but that definitely, I think I'm always interested in talking to people that have kept stats, right? You can always look to one-off Tripp here and there, but I'm on your guys' side, so I'm happy to kind of look at any of these analyses that you guys want to do, and so that we can share that with our audience. So I see a good question coming in, Dustin. All right, I figured it was only a matter of time before we got a question about Tripp. So Dustin, I will answer that in 1 second. Dave says, Harry, do smaller markets routinely get less bonuses and incentives? He's in upstate New York. And so the answer to your question is yes. Smaller markets definitely get less bonuses. So when you're signing up to be a driver in the smaller markets, they also get less weekly quests, or maybe no quests at all. And so there's not a whole lot you can do about that. But in general, I think you just want to approach small town or small city driving, kind of understand what works well in your city, just at a high level. For example, Monday through Thursday are not going to be very busy in small cities, whereas in LA, San Francisco, it is going to be busy. So you might need to plan your driving schedule, just be a little bit smarter. You don't have as much flexibility in a small city. I know, Christian, you've done a little driving in small to medium cities versus like a big city like San Francisco. Do you agree?
Yeah, I drove in Santa Barbara for 4 months. And the biggest thing coming out of Santa Barbara was, it's slow a lot, but when it gets busy, it's really busy. So, when it was good, it was great, but most of the time it was pretty slow.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, so I think we've got a good question here from Dustin. He says, what's your take on this new Tripp company? I'm sure as much as I've been approached by it, I know you must have as well. So Dustin, you are correct. I have gotten a lot of very strange emails, tweets, Facebook messages, pretty much anything and everything talking about this new company called Tripp. And we're going to have an article and a video out about them next week. But for the most part, I guess what I'll say, and I'll let Christian chime in here since we just talked about it, there are a lot of red flags when I look at this company. And, I never I always like to give everyone a chance, but I think that the way they've kind of hyped this up and kind of a lot of the tactics that they're using with their recruiters or, their marketing people, or I don't even know who's involved or who isn't involved in the company. But all I can say for facts is there's no app. They don't have a license from the CPUC, which is a California Public Utilities Commission, or any utilities commission in any state. They don't have insurance. They didn't have a website until I think a few days ago, which is kind of like a huge red flag to me, because even if a company has a website, there's still a lot that needs to go on from there. And sort of fourth, since they don't have an app, there's no, they haven't given an actual ride. And if you guys have been following my channel for a while, like I've interviewed the CEOs of companies like Ride Austin and people at Uber and Lyft and Fasten and all these different companies, and getting to the point where you're giving, even Bounce in San Diego, right? We just did a couple stories on them. Getting to the point where you're actually doing rides is like a huge, huge, huge milestone. And so I really don't give any company I would be very cautious with a company that's kind of hyping themselves up this much, and they don't even have an app yet, much less yet have they even given one single ride. What do you think, Christian?
Oh, man. Well, one thing I'm going to say is I officially recommend that you do not sign up for Tripp. And to look at my article coming out. And I just want to make a really big point here. So these guys want drivers in theory to pay $199 a month to be drivers on their platform. If all 1 million Uber drivers signed up for this tomorrow, then Tripp would end up having an income of something to the tune of $2.4 billion per year, which is something that Uber goes through probably before I finish this sentence. So even if they did get every driver to sign up, they just simply wouldn't have enough money to even compete. They'd get clobbered. That's my just analysis of their business kind of proposal. But yeah, I do not recommend that you give them any money. No one should ask you for money to
Well, I don't know if they're actually asking drivers for money right now, but I think their model in the future is going to be, hey, instead of, we are just complaining about all these commission and, the high commission that we're paying to Uber, and in the future, instead of paying, 70% commission to Uber, you can just pay us a flat fee. But I don't know, just knowing the business model, insurance is really expensive, marketing for riders is really expensive. I just don't see how that will work. And I think that's kind of the point that you're making. And, Juno is a really good example of this. I think Juno and even Tripp, I will give them some credit in that they really have honed in on a lot of the biggest complaints, right? We all know, if you watch this channel, there's a lot of positives and there are a lot of negatives to driving for Uber and Lyft. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. And some of the top complaints that drivers have around upfront pricing and commissions and things like that, you look at you look at Tripp's marketing and they're saying, oh, we're not going to have we're going to have 0% commission. So though they are kind of recognizing that there are certain problems, and that's why I think they've been able to effectively recruit a bunch of Uber and Lyft drivers that are pissed off about the high commission that Uber and Lyft is taking. But at the same time, you kind of have to realize, right, Uber and Lyft, you can call them greedy, and I think in some respects they definitely are. But at the same time, right, if they're charging, let's say they're charging 40% commission, another company comes in and they're saying we're going to charge 5% commission. Well, where does that 35% difference go, right? That just doesn't seem like it's possible to run a company on that. So, that's what I would kind of keep in mind there. Dustin says, I've been told they are backed up with a couple million and be asked to do video conferences, but figure not to waste my time till it's live. I'm glad I chose correctly, as you feel the same way. And yeah, like I said, I'll give any company a chance, but I would proceed with caution is what I would say.
One of the video conferences
says, do you think Express Drive program will stand the test of time after the IPO? And so he is referring to Lyft's Express Drive program, which basically gets you a car if you don't have an eligible vehicle for Lyft. And I would have to say yes, because even though these flexible vehicle rental and leasing programs are expensive, I mean, frankly, there are a lot of people, a lot of people that don't have a car, maybe don't have good credit, and if you're in that situation, you may not also have a job. And so you think about it in that perspective. perspective. There are a lot of people who, this program, even though it's expensive, it costs a couple $100 a week. You're definitely going to be, if you're working full time, I guarantee you're going to make you're going to at least be making $200 a week. So you're not going to be losing money. It's pretty much impossible to lose money with this program, if you're actually driving full time. So I think it's more about making sure that if you're going into one of these leasing or rental programs, that you understand what you're getting yourself into. That, if you sign a lease where, you need to drive the car every week, you can't take a week off, because then you're going to owe $230, right? So as long as you understand what you're getting yourself into and you have the right expectations, then that makes sense. I know, Christian, you've even tested out a couple rental programs up in San Francisco, right?
Correct. The big key thing with rentals is to always read the fine print. Make sure you understand it back and forth, and run your numbers and do the math. But rentals are really geared towards full-time drivers. I recommend a rental as a temporary solution, over a permanent solution if you can, just because rentals have sort of poor tax advantages. And, often, especially in the case of Lyft Express Drive, they receive a different sort of compensation package than a normal driver does. So Lyft Express Drive, a lot of the drivers will pay a little bit more, or they'll get different rates and so on and such forth. So yeah.
Definitely. So real quick, we've got about 15 minutes left. And if you guys are just joining right now, thank you for joining. We do these monthly YouTube lives every single month. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and also that you hit the little bell so you get notifications when we go live. At the end of today's session, I'm going to be giving away 3 free copies of my new book, The Rideshare Guide, which makes for a great Christmas present, I will say. And looks like we got Your Driver Mike, another fellow YouTuber, is on here. So thank you for the support, guys. Dustin says we should do a collab sometime. I'm happy to do so. Feel free to reach out and we can set that up. I know we featured a couple of your videos recently over on the MRP blog. And let's see. Larry says, have you heard of Uber and Mears Transportation partnering up here in Orlando? I have not heard of that. The Excel specialist says, any thoughts on the arbitration flood Uber is experiencing? So I don't know that I've heard specifically much about this, Excel specialist, but I definitely know that now with Uber, since they've had all these issues, with class actions, if you actually want to, you can basically no longer do a class action against Uber. You have to go to arbitration. So I guess it would make sense that, if you're a driver that is, for example, suing Uber because you think that you're an employee and not an independent contractor, you want to sue them over a background check issue, then yeah, you would have to go to arbitration first. And so I suspect that may be, they could be seeing an increase there, but I don't know for sure.
On that arbitration thing, I actually just read about it a few minutes ago before we got on here. It's really interesting. So somebody figured out a way to get 12,000 Uber drivers to file with Uber, request for arbitration individually. Mm-hmm. So, for the last 5 years, as part of Uber trying to mitigate these class action lawsuits, they've fought very hard for enforcing their arbitration agreement between Uber and the drivers in the contract. And if you don't know what arbitration is, it's an agreement to settle things outside of court. So Uber, in fighting this battle, put in their contract that they would agree to pay for arbitration, and it'd be one-on-one drivers. So someone figured out a way to have 12,000 drivers file these sort of requests for arbitration over various disputes as drivers. So now Uber's trying to figure out a way to sweep them sort of like under the rug, because 12,000 arbitration cases is a lot.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that it's actually a pretty smart strategy, because, when Uber has to have their lawyers even review some arbitration case against, even if it's a driver just representing themselves, they got to pay their lawyers probably $500 or $1,000 an hour. So, we've actually featured a couple articles from drivers who took Uber or Lyft to small claims court, sent them demand letters, and did things like that. And oftentimes they end up settling, but they usually have to sign an NDA. And so they can't can't always talk about it, but just if you guys are interested in like pursuing that legal route with Uber and Lyft, you do have options. It's a little bit of work and a little bit of hassle, but sort of think about it like that. Anytime Uber's lawyers have to review anything, it costs them like $500 to $1,000 per hour to review that. So if you're fighting them over like $1,000, oftentimes it's cheaper for them to just settle with you if you have a somewhat legitimate case. So, keep that in mind. Savage Scientist says, what about how Uber is shutting down the referral plan and demanding YouTubers to stop using the Uber logo, etc.? So I haven't I think I know what you're talking to. Uber updated their referral terms and said that, basically what they kind of came out with these really more stringent terms and said, you need to know who you're referring and all this stuff. And we were working on an article and video about this, but basically, I think what Uber, in my 5 years of doing this, one of our, kind of main revenue sources is signing up new drivers for Uber and Lyft and other services. And, basically what these companies do not like is when you're competing with them for drivers. So for example, they do not like if you're doing paid ads on Google or Facebook, or if you're doing billboards on the side of the road, right? Anywhere where they're spending advertising dollars, they don't like that. But if you're out on YouTube creating videos or doing blogs or anything like that, I've actually never heard of drivers getting, deactivated or in trouble or anything like that. You can kind of still refer people, even if you don't know them. But in their terms, it may say, hey, you need to refer people, they need to be your friend, because they're really trying to avoid those people that are trying to take advantage of the system. But if you're just creating good content and informing other drivers about what it's like to be a driver, I think that you'll be okay when it comes to that. So hopefully that answers your question. Dustin says, did your referrals or over 90 days drop off as well? I went from 455 to 120. So to be honest, I don't really check my Uber referrals and the status and all of that very often or at all, just because, you don't have a lot of control. Once they're in the pipeline, you can't do much. And frankly, if it's been 90 days since a driver has signed up, I'd say there's probably 0 or 1% chance that they're actually going to go through the process and get you a bonus or, kind of get you paid. So that's something to keep in mind. Kevin says, Uber forces everyone into arbitration and they're now being sued because they never actually schedule any arbitration. So yeah, that's definitely interesting. We'll keep an eye on that because you're right. I think it could have a big impact for Uber. Let's see. Los Angeles says Lyft is going to be a better IPO. Seems like they're getting sued. So I've got a question for you guys. We've got a few minutes left here, and I've got a question for everyone that's watching. Let's say you are an investor. Who would you rather invest your money in? Which IPO would you rather invest your money in, Uber or Lyft's IPO? So Christian, I'll give you a chance to take a crack at that one first.
Lyft. And the reason I would invest in Lyft is strictly a US based company right now. They don't have like as much exposure to these sort of like testing kind of weird programs or these sort of, international forays. And in addition to that, I think that in comparison to Uber, their, market capitalization's relatively undervalued. It has a higher upside. I think both of them have roughly the same amount of risk.
Got it. Yeah, so it looks like I'm kind of reading the comments right here. It looks like we got a lot of drivers that actually would want to invest in Lyft. A couple that say Uber. Steven says, I would short both. And Rideshare Revolution says Tripp. So I think he might be joking, but hopefully not going to be investing too much. Michael says, I feel like Uber's way ahead on the driverless cars. Savage Scientist says the name Uber is worth more. And Kevin says, I'd invest in Lyft. Uber is trying to be all things to all people in all places, and that never works. And yeah, I think that's definitely, what's funny is that for Uber and Lyft, right, like 90% of their business is what we're doing every day, like going out and driving and giving rides, and UberX and Lyft and all these rides that you guys are doing every day. Yet Uber is like investing in self-driving cars and bikes and scooters and Uber Eats and all this other stuff. But it is funny how it kind of all comes back to that rideshare component. So, definitely an interesting observation there. Sammy says, for the same reason that Christian mentioned, he thinks that Lyft still has lots more room to expand. So interesting thoughts. If you guys do have any final questions, we'll go ahead and sign off in a few minutes here. But I want to know, Christian, did you see any questions that you want to make sure we answer before we sign off, or do you think we've kind of covered just about everything?
I think I've seen pretty much every question in here.
Okay. Pedro said, Martin says, how do we sign up for your book? Well, I'll go ahead and leave a link. You can buy it on Amazon if you don't win it today. But my book is available on Amazon. Pedro says, why don't I get any promotions from Lyft? I'm in the Los Angeles area. Well, if you're in the LA area, you should definitely be getting promotions from Lyft and or Uber if you're signed up. What I would do, first thing to do is like kind of make sure that you're in contact or you're friends with other drivers in the area. That could be through the Facebook groups or, people that you meet or whatever it might be, so that you can kind of compare notes, because it is important, to kind of understand what other drivers are getting. And then I would reach out to Lyft, because you may have signed up in a different market that doesn't offer bonuses and then move to LA or something like that. But you should definitely be getting them. Savage Scientist says, hey, rideshare guy, I'm also on YouTube. I make Uber videos too. I focus on the science, tech, and math behind Uber. Well, that's awesome. Feel free to send me, maybe one or two of your favorite videos, and you can potentially feature it over on our course blog, where we feature a bunch of YouTubers. Harold says, are you going to the Detroit Auto Show? No, I will not be going to the Detroit Auto Show. But I did just recently do a cool conference here in LA called LA Commotion. Rideshare Revolution says, both apps love lighting money on fire. Rideshare is still a growing industry though. And yeah, I think that's actually a good comment, because I don't know if a lot of people realize that Uber lost $4.5 billion last year, and I think they're gonna lose about the same amount this year. So, as drivers, definitely you wanna think about, keep that in mind, right? For them going forward. They're probably gonna try to lose less money in the future. So try to take advantage of the opportunity as much as possible. So Dave says, where does he feature YouTubers? So let me leave a link, because over on our, we've got a video training course site for drivers, and we've got a blog over on that site. And that's actually where we feature a lot of other YouTubers. I know we featured Dustin and a couple others. So you can definitely subscribe there, so you can keep an eye out there. And Bruce says, I need an address where to send my stats sheet. So I'll leave my email for you, and you can send me an email. Los Angeles Unstoppable says, hey, Harry, would like to have a major market drive off. Would you sponsor that kind of contest? So I'm assuming you mean something where a bunch of drivers get together and we see who can make the most amount of money. I think that would actually be pretty cool to have like a bunch of like top drivers. I know Rideshare Revolution, who's on here in Chicago, he's always earning pretty well. It'd be interesting to like pit him against someone in San Francisco or someone in LA, and kind of make sure everyone works the same amount of hours or times or whatever it might be. But that might be kind of cool. I don't know if I'm the right person to organize it, because it sounds like a lot of work, but I would definitely be one to participate.
I think it'd have to be in the same city. That way, it's like you're playing the same game in the same stadium kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, or maybe they can kind of like adjust it, maybe take the average, maybe you get 5 drivers in every city, and then whoever's the top driver in each city or something like that. Yeah. That could be pretty cool. And we can kind of, I don't know, we'd have to figure out a way to, make it so that it's fair. So like like Jay in San Francisco, who, kind of like makes $2,000 a week. It's not really fair comparing him to someone in another city. So we'd have to kind of make it fair, but that would definitely be fun experience.
I think you, myself, and Jay should do it either in LA and San Francisco, kind of like Top Gear style. Have you ever seen Top Gear? That'd be great.
I have not seen Top Gear, maybe a long time ago, so I don't really remember.
All right.
Okay, cool. Well, I think if I don't see any other questions, Savage Scientist says the most fair way would be tour style. Yeah, I definitely agree. So awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys for coming on. And, I think this month, as I mentioned, we're gonna do a little giveaway of my new book, The Rideshare Guide. So we'll give out 3 copies tonight. And in order to enter the contest, all you need to do is send me an email and let me know what you think is the best gift for rideshare drivers. It is Christmas, right? So to get in the holiday spirit, Christian has the Christmas lights behind him. If maybe it's what you want as a driver, or what you want your spouse to give you. What's the best gift for rideshare drivers? Send me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com. Christian, what's at the top of your rideshare Christmas list? Is it like a dash cam, or is it a phone mount, or what do you got over there?
Definitely a phone mount, because I broke my most recent phone mount. Yeah, easy phone mount for sure.
Dash cam, yeah. So I see a couple people chiming in with a dash cam, and if you guys are watching this right now, definitely, I want to tease a little, content or a little giveaway we're going to be having. I think in a week or two, a company called Owlcam sent us like 4 dash cams to, basically check out, and I think the camera is actually way too expensive for rideshare drivers to buy, because it's like $250 plus $100 a year for their 4G service. But it's a super cool camera, and we're going to be giving out 3 of those in the next week or two. So definitely keep an eye out for our Owlcam review, because it's expensive, and I don't know that I would necessarily recommend buying it, but it's a very cool product, and if you can win it for free, it's awesome. We do a lot of giveaways, and there's usually a pretty good chance of winning. So like right now, if you guys send me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com, and let me know what is your favorite gift for rideshare drivers, you'll be entered to win one of these 3 books that we're going to be giving away. And I would say usually we've got about maybe 10 or 20 people that enter. So it's pretty good odds of winning. I think some people have even won 2 books or two gifts, which, at some point I might have to put the kibosh on. But looks like I've got Dave says I would get puke bags. Martin says fancy tip jars. And Michael says dash cams are the most important thing to protect yourself. So awesome. All good comments, all good feedback, great questions as always. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys for joining. We will be back next month doing our YouTube live. And I think we're actually trying to do them a little more frequent, maybe every 2 to 3 weeks. So thank you. I think Dustin, you recommended that last time and this time, but we'll keep doing the YouTube lives. A lot of fun. Christian, thank you for joining today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of fun. And for everyone who joined today, thank you very much. If you guys do have any questions, you can always email me, harry@therideshareguy.com. Go ahead and leave a comment on any of our YouTube videos. And don't forget to enter the contest for the new book, The Rideshare Guide. Send me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com, with your #1 gift for rideshare drivers. And if you guys are interested in signing up for healthcare, make sure you check out Stride Health. We'll go ahead and leave a link right now in the live chat in the show notes, and you guys can learn a little bit more info about that. Really appreciate everyone joining. So until next month, stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Take it easy, y'all.